Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sheltered Sages, the show where two formerly sheltered homeschoolers, now adults, take a look at the complexities of life one messy Reddit story at a time. I'm Andrew.
Wow, I am Philip.
You did that perfectly. Yes! It's about time.
You got it. That was it.
I'm very excited.
That was
all right.
really wonderful.
And that was from memory. I wasn't reading a script, everyone. Okay, all right. Anyways, back to the matter at hand. Yeah. So every week we kind of tackle different crazy topics. I say crazy topics. We have normal topics.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes. And then we just look at how other people have experienced their own lives. And we just read people's stories on Reddit and kind of share our own experiences being homeschooled and how that all it plays out in the real world.
Yeah. If this is your first episode, welcome, of course. You're kind of further into it, which is exciting to say. That means we have enough episodes.
We're in the double digits.
Yeah, you started at a later episode. So if this is your first one, welcome. If this is not your first episode, welcome back.
Yeah, you know how things work around here.
But do we want to explain how the pickle flick goes?
I think we'll just do it nice and simple.
Yeah.
So we read from a few Reddit stories. We don't classify people as mean words. We call them a picklefoot to determine whether or not these people deserve the ridicule of the internet. No one deserves the ridicule of the internet, but some of these people are pickle feet, and we're going to determine that right now. So today's topic.
Yes.
I'm taking the lead, but what are we talking about today?
We're talking about sports, which is a little bit more controversial as a homeschooler.
Yeah.
Depending on how large your family was. You didn't have enough siblings to make an entire team, so you probably didn't have like a homeschool league in your house.
No.
I'm just going to assume that most people who are homeschooled, who are listening to this, did not have a full league. That said, you probably did play sports with your siblings, and you may have seen a sports game or two while growing up.
I actually participated in a lot of sports when I was young.
Oh,
I
okay.
know. Yeah, so when I was very young, I think I told you actually, I participated in soccer a lot growing up. And then, so I played like that for 2-3 years, something like that. And then just wasn't my biggest fan. I tried basketball, wasn't great at it. I tried baseball, wasn't great at it, didn't love it. Do you know what sport that I actually settled on before we got to martial arts?
Oh, before martial arts.
Have we talked about this?
No.
I was a gymnast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe we haven't talked about this. Yeah. So I did gymnastics for a long time, actually. So I think gymnastics was the first sport that I did. And then I did that for a long while. And then I kind of did other sports on top of gymnastics. So I would do the soccer, I would do the basketball, I would do the baseball. I'd try everything for about a year.
Yeah.
But I got really into tumbling, actually. So I was the guy who you would like see the videos of like doing the spins and the flips and the things like that.
That's cool.
So I used to do that. And then over summer, I think I was like 11 or 12, I hit my growth spurt. And I mean, legitimately over a summer, I grew a foot.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And when you're tumbling, you have you identify your center of balance and your center of gravity. And especially when you're doing flips or back handsprings or things like that, it's very important that you know where your body is going to go. And I started to notice that I was constantly hitting my head because I thought I had more time in the air than I really did.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And I kept bumping my head from like doing back handsprings and things like that, which explains a lot actually about my current disposition. But all that to be said, I did have to get pulled from gymnastics, and then we were looking for something else for me to do, and that is when I stepped into Taekwondo.
That's fair.
Which is where we are at today, actually. Yeah. So I know I've explained to some of you, but if you're new to the podcast, I actually teach Taekwondo weekly. That's my pretty much half of my job for the company that I work with right now. And then on Mondays, I volunteer over at a school, and that is where I get to teach you Taekwondo, actually. Yeah.
So I also do Taekwondo. I was encouraged to do so by Andrew.
I dragged him along.
After a long while of not really wanting to do any sport, I guess, I decided to try it out, and I really am enjoying it. It's really fun.
What I love about Taekwondo, and I'm sure we'll talk about more sports later, but what I love about Taekwondo is it's all about self-development, right? Which kind of is the same for like gymnastics, which is probably why I gravitated to it so much is it's like while you have teammates and while you have people doing things with, your only requirement is to do your best and to continue to grow yourself.
Yeah.
You're not designed to do like a team or things like that. Golf, that was the other game that I played a lot.
Golf.
That was the other thing, golf.
Okay.
So anyways,
that's fun.
All that to be said, I think we've got enough of a foundation to be like, hey, we know a little bit about sports.
Absolutely.
We're predominantly geeks and nerds.
Sure. Yeah.
But we know a little bit about sports.
A tiny bit.
A tiny bit.
Yeah.
That gives us enough to make a whole podcast, right?
Absolutely.
People have done more podcasts with less foundation. Probably. I mean, we're doing one.
Calling them out. Okay. Well, there we go.
I can't name any per se, but...
Let's hear some of those crazy stories starting the podcast about now.
All right, so I have the first story for you, and it actually does relate to martial arts.
Okay, let's go.
So I'm very excited for this one. Am I the picklefoot for, quote unquote, forcing my girlfriend to appreciate my hobby?
Depends on how he's doing so. If he actually did force her, no, yes, you're the picklefoot.
Absolutely.
But let's hear about it.
So we are both 18. I have an interest in martial arts and have practiced a decent amount. Judo, wrestling in high school, Muay Thai, and karate. The thing is, my girlfriend finds martial arts silly and never comes to my tournaments because she says martial arts look stupid to her and she doesn't want to laugh. Additionally, she always rolls her eyes and says, "Hi-ya," mockingly whenever I bring it up. Do you appreciate that?
I like, yeah.
I just can hear it. I can just, I've genuinely found this upsetting. It's something that's really integral to my life. And I'm not asking my girlfriend to force an interest, but at least be respectful, you know? She has hobbies I have no interest in and find boring too, but I don't mock them because I recognize different things appeal to different people. So I confronted her and said I wanted her to be more respectful and at the very least not say anything if she can't appreciate it / say something nice. She got angry and said she's not obligated to be nice or interested in a hobby that she's not into, and I shouldn't force her. I don't think she's obligated to be polite, but it's just basic social norms to not mock stuff that other people are passionate about. Am I the picklefoot?
Really easy. Not really, no.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was thinking as well. Yeah. It's not hard.
No. That said, I have known a good bit of people who behave in that way. They're like, if I don't like it, I don't have to be nice about other people liking it. Honestly, like if I think it's not cool or I think it's a kind of boring thing, I can just go over to other people and say, "Oh, this is silly. This is pointless." And if they like it, that's on them, but I am allowed to make fun of things that I don't like. To a certain extent, I feel like if you go, okay, you can't make fun of anything you don't like as long as someone else likes it, that gets a little more like problematic. That said, if your friend, or in this case, your partner is really passionate about something, it says more about you for being mean to them about this entire thing versus about them. Like, why do you have to make fun of it? Why do you have to be mean or rude about it? Like, was this a thing before where she just never really liked this and thought it was silly or pointless? Because I've seen people who have certain ideas about, like, you know, fighting or martial arts and think it's silly. That said, it's like, did you have a conversation about what martial arts is and find out more about why he's passionate? Because I think it's weird if you still appreciate your partner, but you don't appreciate what they're interested in. Yeah. I don't know if you can really do that.
Yeah, and that's where it really comes down to for me, where it's like, we've talked before about partners having different hobbies and the importance of people having their own hobbies.
Yeah.
Mocking someone and belittling someone, because that's the thing. This is reaching like mocking and almost like bullying territory of the fact that like, I'm not coming to support you at your tournaments.
Yeah.
Because I'm just gonna laugh.
Yeah.
I'm not going to enjoy talking to you about it or things like that. I'm just gonna roll my eyes and make hi-ya comments. It's like and I think he hit the nail on the head when he said, when he had that conversation with her, he'd be like, I just want you to respect that I'm doing these things.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't have to be polite and blah 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 blah. Sorry, it's grumbly, but
no, you're good.
It's just, it is immature in that regard. Which I will say, segueing to the ages, they're both 18.
Okay.
So thinking about it from that context, they're both kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to me, it makes a little bit of sense of like, I can understand why you might be acting this way or talking this way, because like that was what you did in high school, or that's what you did when you were around your friends or things like that. And so you anticipate that like that's the acceptable and that's the norm. But he already said that too, and it's like, I just think it's basic social norms to not mock stuff other people are interested in.
Yeah.
And I think teasing is one thing. Like, sure. So my wife and I, we tease each other about some of our hobbies that we're not completely into. So like, my wife loves reality TV. Not all reality TV, but some reality TV, specifically TLC adjacent reality TV. And I'm not the biggest fan.
That's fair.
I don't love it. It doesn't really bring me joy. It just makes me upset. And like, I'll tease her about it. But unless I'm literally like sitting down to have dinner and like we're sitting down to watch something, that's the only time I tell her to turn it off. And I don't even tell her to turn it off. I'm just like, hey, can we watch something that like the two of us are interested in watching? And sometimes she'll literally be like, oh, well, there's only like a couple minutes left of the episodes. And I'll try and engage with her. I'm like, did he really just say that? Or did she really do that? Or like, wait a minute, how could you do that? You know, I try to engage and recognize that this is something she's passionate about. Even if I don't like it, I can appreciate that she likes it and I'm going to engage with it. Same thing on the flip side of she has no interest in doing Taekwondo whatsoever. Yeah. I have tried so long to get her to step into class, and she's told me, she's like, Andrew, I know you're the instructor. I will not tell you yes, sir. And if you try and give me push-ups, I will not do them. I'm just like, well,
that's not going to work very well.
That's not going to work out very well, which is understandable. I know some people have really weird feelings about that.
Yeah, that's power dynamics.
The power dynamic shift. Yeah. But so I respect that if she's like, I'm not going to do it. That's why I dragged Philip into it. Because like, I need someone in there that I can be friends with. It's fine. You're at a green belt now, right? Yeah. So you're halfway to black belt.
At the
I'm
point
really
that we're
excited.
Recording this, I am at green belt. Yeah. Maybe eventually, when you're listening to this, I'll be at a black belt.
I mean, you're halfway there, so that means you'd be there in about a year and a half. I think. Wow.
Really?
If you consistently stay and don't miss testing, I think you'd be there in a year and a half.
That's too soon.
No, you'll be fine.
Okay.
You'll be great. It's fine. You might actually be testing for your black belt when I'm up for my next dawn.
Oh, no.
That actually would be really cool. We're in a testing together.
Okay. That would be fun. That would be fun. I finally get to test along with you.
Yes. But anyways, all that to be said, it is understandable that some people don't share hobbies.
Yeah.
But it's that respect of recognizing, hey, I don't appreciate this hobby. I don't enjoy this hobby, but I'm going to respect that that's something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And I can engage with it to a certain extent. So, one more thing I did want to talk about before. I did write this down as a point, especially in something like a physical activity, specifically martial arts or anything where it is a self-development skill. It is so important to have your partner, like, not necessarily just present, but at the very least supporting you. So that was one of the things I wanted to talk about, is it's like during my martial arts journey, when I was going through my degree and getting my black belt, my wife had zero desire to participate, but every time that I had a testing, she was there and in person. Whenever I had a graduation ceremony, she was there in person cheering me on. One of my loudest cheers when I broke concrete for the first time, she was there cheering me. So it's like, it is so important. And even then I've seen like your wife at most of your testing, she's been there supporting you. So having that support from your partner is so important, especially in these more self-motivated activities like martial arts.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I did just want to touch on, because I'm like, it is important to have that support, especially if she's not going to any of his tournaments.
That's a little difficult.
That's difficult. But the first comment I have, not the pickle foot, sounds like your girlfriend should be hayad out of your life. I was like,
they thought they really did something on that one.
Hey, I mean, 446 upvotes.
Okay.
Does she also act immaturely if her friends have hobbies that she doesn't like? Ick. Hubby plays World of Warcraft. Am I remotely interested in games? No. Will I hear about it and congratulate him on beating a boss? You bet I will. They replied to that. OP replied to that, basically just laughing at the hayat out of your life, because that is pretty funny.
That is hilarious.
Another person commented, you didn't force her to do anything. You just asked her not to be a complete jerk about your interest and behave with some common decency. Not the picklefoot. OP also responded to that one. Exactly. She's perfectly free not to do that, and I'm perfectly free to think she's being rude because of it.
Yeah.
Someone else replied to that comment saying, dude, break up with her. If she's this disrespectful about an integral hobby of yours, she will also be disrespectful about other things too.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what it is this is demonstrating a problematic behavior that's going to continue to show up.
Exactly. The way she said, too, that she's allowed to not like it. It's like, sure, you're allowed to do anything. There's a difference between being allowed to do something or say something or act in a way and actually wanting or doing that.
Just because everything is permissible does not mean everything is beneficial.
Exactly. Yes, that's really nice to say. And so as a partner to a person who's doing something that's really important to them, I think it's not nice to do that. What you were saying before about our wives supporting us in Taekwondo, why one of the biggest reasons I like Taekwondo is not necessarily for the fighting at all. A lot of people go into martial arts sometimes thinking like, oh, I'll be able to kick really high, and if I get in a fight, I'll be able to fight. I don't like fighting, and Andrew knows. There's a thing where we do sparring in Taekwondo. We have to fight someone else. To spar.
Yes, yeah. That's like the Olympic tournament aspect of Taekwondo that you do have to learn.
Yes, I do not like sparring, and it's not necessarily because
I don't like it either.
It's because I have to go against other people. I like the aspect of learning to be more flexible and pushing myself to learn these moves and to memorize the different movements of it and to actually push my body and my mind to grow. And so I think especially for a martial art, when you're looking into it, it's a little bit different than a lot of other sports in the way of like, you're not fighting against someone else. It's not like one team against another team. Most of it is just focusing on growing yourself and being a better person. And so if you have a partner that's seeing you growing as a person and trying to better yourself, and they're just looking at it going, hiya, that's so silly, I don't care about it, I think it's just really, really not smart at all.
Funny.
Yeah, that's not cool. And I think it's an important thing to realize that even people that are close to you can sometimes not necessarily care about your well-being or your growth, and recognizing that difference. And so if your partner at that time isn't like appreciating you trying to become a better person through this martial art form, then yes, a few times I go, you should break up with them and leave. But I'm like, at that point, like they kept saying in the comments, they're going to behave in this way for a lot of other reasons.
And they're
too.
both 18. They'll bounce back from this.
Yeah,
like I don't want to be that person that always promotes like breaking up with your partner. But in this situation, it's very obvious that this is not going to be something that's going to be a healthy relationship.
Yeah. Now, also, if OP is doing this just for, let's say, clout, just to be cool, that's a little bit different. You shouldn't do that. And if you're doing that and your partner is like, hiya, because she's making fun of you doing that.
You doing that. Yeah. I do know, thankfully not as much in our school, but I do know a few people. One of them is very much just all about how they look. And I've had multiple moments where I've just rolled my eyes when I see some of their like social media posts. Okay. When I'm just like, you think you look so cool, and it's just cringy. When you're like trying to post stuff to look cool, and you're just, that's why I never try and look cool. I'm just like, I know I'm a goofball. I'm like, I have more rolls than a bread truck. I'm aware of that. Yeah. So,
aw, don't say that.
It's fine. I like it's a good joke. I like it. But that being said, it is one of those realities of you need people to support you. Yeah. You need to be supported. Yeah. And don't be weird.
Don't be weird about it.
No. But it doesn't seem like this guy is. He seems pretty down to earth.
Yeah. Seems cool.
But yeah, so that was my first story. So
I like that.
Yeah. So the reason I decided to do sports actually with this episode was actually because when this episode comes out, it'll actually be either the Wednesday before our like regional black belt testing. So I actually have 2 students that are going up for their first dan, which is like the basic black belt that you get. And then I have 1 student who's going up for their second dan, which is where the rank that I'm currently at right now. So I thought this would be an appropriate time to release a sports themed episode.
That's fair.
Just, since it'll be on the mind.
The sports are going on in our lives, so it's important to kind of bring it up in this situation. I think we're focused more, my story is about jiu-jitsu as well.
Oh, jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
So it's still martial arts that are as well.
Yes, I will say of the martial arts, jiu-jitsu is the one that you predominantly are sparring with someone. Like there's a lot of grapple sports and things. It's pretty much you're grappling with someone.
That's what I was going into. Are you ready for my story?
Let's hear it. Yeah.
Let's go.
Like that preface.
Am I the picklefoot for refusing to spar with a female opponent and BJJ?
I saw this story. I haven't read this story, but I saw the title and I almost chose that one for this. All right, let's go. Let's hear it.
So just to give a preface to it, BJJ is the acronym for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes.
It is a combat sport based off of a lot of grappling and often groundwork. So you're generally on the ground fighting someone
Very
else.
similar to like wrestling in that mentality of like trying to get an advantage over an opponent from that opposite perspective or that opposite thing. Honestly, a lot of times when I talk to people who talk about wanting to get a different martial arts besides Taekwondo once they've reached a certain level, I do actually recommend Jiu-Jitsu, because Jiu-Jitsu is great. Like Taekwondo is great at keeping people at like arm's length with your kicks and your strikes and things like that.
Yeah.
But in the real world, a lot of times you will end up in a grappled situation, which we do teach self-defense and things like that to deal with. Mm-hmm. But Jiu-Jitsu is really the one that helps you get out of that environment and like be able to get on top in those situations.
That's fair. So I, 24 male, do BJJ, and I was training on Sunday. I was just doing some sparring with a few different people, and at one point, a young woman, 18, female, came up to me and asked me if I wanted to spar. She was athletic, but she was quite small, probably about 5'2". I'm a pretty big guy, so I didn't think it would be much use to roll. I guess fight is what he means in that way. I laughed when she asked me, and I said she might want to find a better matchup. She frowned at me when I said this and walked off. She must have interpreted it as me belittling her, but I honestly did not mean to do that. I didn't believe we would be a suitable matchup, and I only laughed a bit to try to make myself seem in good humor and friendly. I laugh quite often. That's just how I usually act, but she took it as a put-down, even though that wasn't the reason for it. She was talking to the head coach. Oh, face. She was talking to the head coach, who then asked everyone in the gym to stop sparring and called them over. Mm-hmm. He told me I was going to spar with the girl, and he got everyone else to sit around us in a circle and watch. I did way worse than I usually do and ended up getting dominated by her in the match. We did about 6 rounds, and she submitted me on every one of them. When it finished, she just looked at me, winked, and walked off. It was pretty embarrassing since everyone in the gym was watching and cheering her on. I don't think I deserved to be publicly humiliated for that. It was a misunderstanding, and that sort of treatment was taking things too far. So, is he the picklefoot?
Does he give a description of him at all? Like his height, his weight, his age, anything like that?
The only description he gives here that I can see is that he's a pretty big guy.
Uh-huh. So, first off...
Who laughs often.
So, definitely the picklefoot. I will say this.
Yeah.
And I feel like I feel a little bit of ways about it, but the minute that the coach was like, everyone gather around, I was like, I know exactly where this is going. Mm-hmm. Because I have, in a certain sense, done something similar before, actually, in a coaching environment. Because I think that sometimes showing someone up is a great way to A, demonstrate that this is behavior we're not going to encourage, and B, prove that you're not as good as you think you might be.
Humbling them,
yeah. Absolutely. And I think martial arts is really one of those sports, especially with its adults. I try to be very careful with children because children are still developing, but when adults are involved, or like high schoolers, I will do it with high schoolers as well, because high schoolers can get on a high horse, so sometimes it's helpful for them to get taken down a peg sometimes. But all that to be said, the fact that he refused to give his age, his weight, his height makes me wonder, I'm like, how much of a quote unquote big guy are you? Because respectfully,
versus how much of a big guy do you think you are?
Yes. And so it's like, I'm not going to get into the logistics of it, but I will say size is a very important component when it comes to jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Being a bigger person can be a benefit to you, and being smaller in stature can be something that can hinder you. There is a lot of things that go into it. That being said, one of my most memorable sparring moments that I have, and we don't grapple in TKD, we do like ring size or like ring sparring where we're in a ring and we actually do kicks and things like that.
Yeah.
I remember I was sparring our head instructor's wife because she was a black belt. She wiped the floor with me. Because I thought I'd have the height. I thought I had the advantage with my muscles. I am a 300+ pound guy. I have kicked one of my fellow students underneath a table in a sparring match before because I kicked him so hard.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I had to work on control. But that being said, she wiped the floor with me because she used her flexibility and her natural gifts to her advantage that I could not, A, comprehend, and B, I underestimated.
Yeah.
And so, all that to be said, had his primary focus been, I am genuinely, like, I'm 6'5". So I'm 6'5", 300+ pounds. If a 5'2" woman walked up to me and said, hey, I want to grapple spar you, I genuinely be like, I appreciate that. And I'm willing to like go through some like momentums or things with that with you, but I don't feel comfortable doing a full-on match because I would genuinely be worried about hurting you.
Yeah.
That is not the approach that he had.
Nope.
It was, I laughed you off. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well because especially with martial arts, right? It is taking your body and turning it into, in some ways, a weapon to the point where if you get to the black belt, like, don't you get a card that says like, I am a literal weapon?
No. Okay. So that's a little, I mean, you can grab that card if you want.
Okay. Let me pull that. And then,
because I haven't put it in my wallet yet, but that's my second Dan certification.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, no. So you get this black card from the Gukiwang, which is like the official organization in Korea, and it's all in like Korean. I probably should cover things so it doesn't have my information on it. But all that to be said, yes, you do get certified as a martial artist, and I do have my first one in my backpack.
That's
for it.
cool.
But you know, that whole being a lethal weapon thing is kind of a joke that we joke about.
Well, still, you are a very lethal individual.
Yes,
for
I do have a lot of
things.
skills that can cause a lot of damage.
Yes,
absolutely.
And so when we're thinking about those things, a lot of the training and the skills that we're learning, it doesn't matter what size you are, and you kind of learn how to use your size, your weight, your power to your advantage. Yeah.
Everyone is unique in that regard.
When sparring, there was one situation where I'm a taller individual as well. I have a long, my arms go very, very far. Yes. I have a long span in that, as well as my legs.
Yes, I always forget how long your legs are until we're sitting at this table. And I like stick my foot over on this side and there's your foot. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's so...
I'm so sorry. I'm a very long individual in that way. So whenever I'm sparring, it's generally like if I want to kick somebody from across like the mat area that we're like fighting at, it's not too hard for me to do so. And I take that advantage to my advantage.
As you should.
That said, there was a shorter individual that was sparring against me the other day. And they did not kick me often because I kept them away. But when they did, their kicks were so fast and hard that hurt. And I'm like fully padded up.
Yeah.
And I was like, goodness gracious, what is the, to the point that I started kicking at them just to keep them away. Like,
I was like, get away from me.
Please stop kicking me. Because they were so good at what they did. When you fully have that technique and when you know what you're doing, those skills somewhat transcend size and weight.
Absolutely.
And so looking at a person saying, you can't fight me because of your weight class. Now, I do understand that's why in like wrestling and other fighting styles, there is weight classes that go along there, especially if you're both in the same like classification of skills and your different weights and sizes, it can get complicated. But that said, if you're just like practicing and having fun and you're both okay with it.
And that's, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I think it's really important. It is important to practice with people of different sizes because that's how the real world is. Like if you get into a situation, there's no guarantee that the person that is going to be the same size as you or the same weight or the same gender, you're going to have to get comfortable with doing these things on different individuals. Like we have drills that we do in Taekwondo where I partner you all with different sized people, and just so that you get that practice of being able to like, I can do the self-defense on a person shorter than me, a person taller than me, a person the same size as me, a male, a female. You know, you have that wide variety because but you have to learn how to be able to do that. So it was like, that's the thing. In that situation with an individual of that size, I would be like, I'll run drills with you. I don't feel comfortable going a full out sparring match.
That's fair.
And even like me as an adult, it's very rare that I do spar little ones. And if I do, it's usually because they're being really cocky and I want to like remind them that I have a black belt for a reason. And the other reason is the other thing that I'll do is I only go the lightest of contact. It's that's very light, like boom, slight touch, just to let them know like, hey, you left your guard down here, or hey, you did this thing. So martial arts in general is all about figuring out your way of doing things. Like you learn the basics, you learn how to do it, but it's all about learning your body and learning what you're comfortable with and what you can do. And then using that to do what you need to do in a sparring match or other situations.
Do you want to hear some of those comments?
Yes, let's hear some comments. I'm imagining they're going to tear this cat apart.
They're pretty easy. They said, "You're the picklefoot."
What?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wild.
You embarrassed her, and she got payback by kicking your butt. Sounds fair to me. And the original poster actually responded.
Did they really?
But they deleted their response.
Of course they did.
The next one is, "You're the picklefoot." If this is true, it reminds me of a story that's posted a few weeks or months ago that's very similar. So a lot of them were saying that it potentially was another story that
like a
this
repost?
Poster, and then they reposted it to see if they could change the ideas of the people by
that's adorable.
changing a little bit of information.
That's
but they're
adorable.
Still the picklefoot.
You're still the picklefoot. And like,
said, but either way, don't judge someone based on their size. Ever seen Star Wars? Master Yoda? Take this as a life lesson. Also, you're a picklefoot for laughing at her when she asked.
Yeah, that's another big no.
Yeah.
And that's the thing where it's like, it just his overall, like, and we've talked about this before, I think. If not, we've talked about it above table or off mic. About like just the reality of like people when they post on Reddit are going to post like the best foot forward of how they like think the story is and like paints them in the best light. Yeah. And even then, it's like this story does not paint you in a good light. No. It paints you as a jerk.
Yeah.
Martial arts is always about bettering yourself. And if at any point in time that you think that you're the best or you think you're better, you're not going to grow anymore.
Okay.
And so by looking down at someone and being like, I'm not going to spar you, I would absolutely have probably done the same thing if the girl came up to me and was like, hey, he did this and he said this thing.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about jiu-jitsu. I know different schools have different rules or different ways that they navigate sparring, but I will tell you straight up, if one of my smaller of stature students came up to me and was like, hey, I'd like to try and spar one of the taller students, and that taller student laughed, I would absolutely be like, no, we're going to spar. We're going to try this if I believed that it wouldn't be a negative detriment to the smaller individual. Absolutely. But as the commenter said, size is not everything.
Yeah. I think it's important too, because she did not get the shorter individual. She did not get any support. Even this person who's talking about it, there was no handicaps that were placed on him when sparring her. She was just able to take him out, not just on one round, 6 rounds.
6 rounds.
And she got him every single time.
And I might be wrong, but I think in jiu-jitsu, they actually, similar to in wrestling, you have ones where you start on top and you start on the bottom, and similar of like the positions that you're in. Yeah. So if she beat him in all 6 rounds, that means that she dominated whether she was in the top position or in the bottom position in that regard.
Which is incredible.
Which is really incredible.
Yeah.
Like going 6-0 is just insane in any sport that you play in.
And it just calls back to it. I respect when people are like, I don't want to spar someone who's a different weight class or something like that. But back to what you were saying as well, it is helpful to learn how to spar people of different sizes, heights, and things like that. She is really good at what she's doing to be able to spar, or maybe he's just really bad. But I'm going to say she's really good.
Oh, no, he just had a really bad day.
He had a really bad day.
Just a bad day.
This is really complicated
stuff.
She's really good at what she's doing. She was able to take him out without any issue every single time, and he should respect that. And especially if someone's going over and they're asking you, I'd say at that point also ask them, like, are you sure? You know, like, you understand that this might be a little more difficult for you because of her height. Not saying that you're bad at what you do, but
don't
take
do
it
it patronizingly, but just recognize that it's like, I just want to make sure that that's what you're wanting, because I am concerned about the weight, like, the weight difference, the strength difference, things like that.
And then explaining too that you're going to go full on, you're going to spar as like you normally do, and then they're going to come at you. So if they are understanding, especially if you're two consenting adults that are sparring against each other, that's fair. It's okay to do those kinds of things. I was
really worried that at the beginning of the story, this is going to be like, I refuse to spar women because insert really inappropriate sexist reason why. And I was just like...
That is one of the reasons I wanted to pull up this story. It is a very more controversial situation where some people say that all of these things should be separated. There's a lot of nuance in that. And I agree. And I'm not going to go too deep into all those situations there. But I will say, beyond like male and female or height and stuff like that, there are people of differing abilities. There are people of different styles of life that are looking to do different sports. Yeah. To look at those individuals and say, you're not going to be able to do this properly, or you're not going to be able to even get near my ability because of my physical stature or my physical abilities is not fair to them.
Absolutely not.
But I'm going to add something in there. It's not fair to you. For this person over here, he was thinking that he would be able to take her out easily. What he learned that day was that even her at 5'2", when he's a really big guy, could take him out. And so now he learned something new. And by playing around with those different things, by mixing it up, by allowing us to, I'd say, experiment with those different fighting styles and different kinds of people fighting together, it allows us to sometimes learn that different styles are better. You can only get better by pushing yourself to do something new.
Absolutely.
So regardless of your physical ability, regardless of where you've come from before, I want to encourage everyone, try a sport. Oftentimes now we've gotten into all these different leagues. Like, even if you have your legs aren't working like other people's legs or arms or something like that, you can still play a lot of stuff.
Well, in my home, back to like my home life when I was younger, both of my brothers actively played baseball. So I've told before, but both of my brothers were diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Older brother is no longer with us, but my younger brother in a wheelchair. My younger brother was able to still stand and walk, but my older brother would not be able to fully play out of the wheelchair. He could stand for a short period of time. So they would like pull up the wheelchair, he would get out of the chair. They'd have, depending on the player, so sometimes it would be like an actual coach where they would toss the ball and like someone would hit it. But most of the time it was like a T-ball scenario. So they'd have the tee set up and then they go and they'd swing at it. And it was a lot of fun because basically one of the, like, I can't remember what it was called. I'm sure my mom will help refresh my memory, but basically it was like a buddy system. So like every player usually had some form of disability and was assisted by a active body coach or not coach, helper or assistant. I can't remember what the terms were called, but I was my brother's for 1 year and it was actually a lot of fun. We got to, there was a whole league for kids like him. And I know that, like, I've seen, like, the Paralympics. Those people are insane.
Incredible stuff.
And so I think that's so important is that, and this comes back down to just as a person, we have to be respectful of the differences that there are in people and not assuming that we're better than someone else because of some perceived thing. So whether it be height, whether it be weight, whether it be gender, whether it be any of those other stereotypes that you could make assumptions on people, you know what they say about making assumptions. And so I'm not going to say it, but you know what you say about making assumptions. Makes a pickle foot out of you and me. Martial arts is an individual sport where you are bettering yourself. And in order to better yourself, you have to push it against different environments. If you refuse to do that because you think you're better than someone, you are only hindering yourself in that moment. So
that's true.
All right, you ready for the next story?
I am ready for the next
story. I'm pivoting away from martial arts. No, I know.
I thought this entire episode was about martial arts.
It was not. It was sports. But I know.
Was sports.
I know.
I remember that. Okay.
Gosh, I know. I'm so sorry. All right. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Am I the picklefoot for not allowing my son to play sports after he reaches high school? And also telling my wife she is wrong.
Oh, there's two things here.
There's two things, yes.
Telling your wife she is wrong, I would
It's already a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I can't say that you're wrong, sir or ma'am, but I wouldn't do that. For the first one, I need more information.
Absolutely. All right. I am a 48-year-old dad to 2 boys, Daniel, 15, and George, 12. Daniel is almost a carbon copy of me. He looks like me and shares many of my interests, nerdy types of things. My other son, George, is very much the opposite. Even when he was younger, he never had any interest of any of those things. He always liked sports. It came from my brother, who at one point lived with us when George was younger. He introduced George to sports. This led George to eventually beg my wife and I to let him play. We were hesitant, but eventually enrolled him in baseball. He loved it. I'll be honest, I don't really care for it, or any sport for that matter. Growing up, I was the black sheep and had no interest in sports. Sadly, now that my son is 12, I see a lot of the jock types that used to mess with me. He has the exact same attitude, and it honestly bothers me. He also bullies his older brother. Things like turning off his computer while he's playing or taking his food and eating it. He's 3 years younger, by the way. Anyway, my son recently told his mom and I that he really wants to go to a different high school because they have a good baseball program and football program. I told him that was out of the question. For one, he's not allowed to play football at all. It's too dangerous. I also told him he will be going to the same private high school his brother goes to, and he will not be allowed to play anymore. I told him that he is going to put all of his focus on school. If he wants to join other activities like theater or music, I'll support that, but sports are a no-no. He obviously got very ticked. He began to curse me out, which I told him was unacceptable. He said, "F you," and stormed off. He did not say just the F. I grounded him and said that he was to quit baseball immediately, and I will be taking his phone. To my surprise, my wife intervened and said I will not be taking his phone, nor will I stop him from finishing the season. Later that night, George told me he and his mom had already agreed to him going to the other school and that his mom would drive him to and from. I was so heated. I told my wife she was undermining my parenting instincts. I said sports are a waste of time and I won't support him the rest of his life because he chose sports over an education. My wife called me a picklefoot and said that I had no right to act the way I did, but I feel like my son disrespecting me and cursing me out was worse. Am I the picklefoot?
I'm going to say this now.
Go ahead.
And then I'm going to explain why I said it.
Absolutely.
Yes, he's the picklefoot.
Absolutely.
He is the picklefoot. Now, I'm going to take it back to a little story that's there. Yeah.
One hop this time.
So, for those who know the Bible quite well, or even in a distance, there is a little situation in there where it's Jacob and Esau.
I didn't even think about that, but that's good.
So, I'm going to say it wrong. If you really want to read it, go. I might put like
Genesis, I think.
Somewhere in there. I should know. Parents, please don't be upset at me for not knowing the exact place where this is.
You can Google it.
Yeah, I'll go Google it. So in this story, basically, there's one son that is loved far more than the other son for what they're doing. Similar way, one son is more like a more masculine type style son versus the other one who is a more softer son who doesn't like to do as much of those big masculine things. Those sons don't like each other as much, or they kind of go against each other in some ways and play tricks on each other. In the same way, we have in the very, very beginning of this book, we have Cain and Abel, a similar structure where these two brothers are going against each other because they're different and one is more beloved than the other.
Was Cain beloved more by one than the other? At least by God, I know
Abel
he was.
loved, Abel was loved more, and that's why he got jealous of his brother. But it was because Cain was, a picklefoot.
Yes. Okay. I was like, wait, where are you going?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So, in the same way, what I see is the father started out by saying one of his sons is a carbon copy of him.
Yes.
Which shows that he has a really deep connection to one of these kids. Mm-hmm. The other son, he didn't really say much about. He basically just said negative things about this other son. The one that's not like him.
Yeah.
And how this son is acting rude and having issues and doing all these things. He could be. I'm not saying that he's not. I'm believing the father in the way that he's having those big issues. That said, if you as a father have shown favoritism to one of your sons, especially if they're around the same age, and not the other one, there's a reason why he's disrespecting you in that way.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying he should, but also you as a parent showing favoritism is not cool.
No.
Now, beyond that, sports in themselves, I don't feel are toxic. And it seems like this father also has an issue where in their past, they were bullied by those who were doing those kinds of things. And so instead of just going, oh, those people who were in those circles were bad, they go, this entire structure is bad.
Yeah, they throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Exactly. I don't think that's fair to those people who play that game, and especially not to your son, who apparently is very, very passionate about this. This is their life. This is their choices that they've gone over. And by you going over and saying that it's not good and you're going to cancel all of it because of the way that they are, is not great.
Yeah.
Now, all that said, this son, the younger son who plays sports, is obviously having a lot of issues respecting their parents and being kind to their family members. I do feel that that needs to be resolved. And in a certain way, if your child, again, not parenting advice, but I feel if your child is having issues with their behavior, some parents will go, okay, well, they need to stay in sports. They need to. No. It's okay for you to pull them out of extracurricular things because they can't get their schoolwork together or they're not being kind to others. In Taekwondo, there's a whole thing where people who are going to school, if you are shown to not be finishing your classes properly or being mean to other people, you can technically get kicked out of class for that.
Yeah, so it's called an intent to promote form. And basically what it is, it's actually really cool. Up until you're, I think, 16, you have to fill out this form, you have to take this form to your teachers explaining what it is, and it explains what it is on the form. And basically what it is that student creed that we talked about in one of our episodes. It's basically making sure that the child is following it at school. And this includes bullying. This includes following instructions, being respectful in class, things like that. And I have before had to have a conversation with a parent who could not get their kid's intent to promote form signed because the teacher refused to. So it has to be signed by your teacher and it has to be signed by your parent. It has to be signed by both of them. So it is one of those things that we do recognize that you have to maintain certain standards in order to be able to continue, because we're teaching you actual stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting from this one, and you hit the nail on the head when you talked about like the carbon copy, because that was something I was like, that's the thing. So the reason I chose this story is because of an actual conversation that my wife and I have had. And like, we're moving in the direction of having kids.
Yeah.
And like, I think I talked about in one of our episodes with siblings or parents or things like that, wanting to get my kids into D&D and wanting to do these things. I am genuinely terrified my kids will be sports kids.
Really?
Yes, because I don't know sports in terms of like what it's like to be a sports parent or be like the parent or like be the kid of someone in those activities. I don't know what all that entails.
That's fair.
I'm really hoping I get nerdy kids like me who like we can spend time like doing nerdy activities, playing Dungeons and Dragons, doing board games, going to conventions, things like that I know more and have more experience in. That being said, I will not control my children and their interests as long as they're healthy and not like things that will literally cause them pain.
Yeah.
I even to some extent respect the dad's choice to be like, you will not play football. Because it's like, I recognize that there is a lot of controversy about the damage that happens to kids that play football. I see those injuries that happen and things like that. And I can respect that a father, especially like a full contact sport, a father being like, hey, I don't feel comfortable with you doing it. If that's all it had been, I would have been like, yeah, I stand by that. But it's the fact that the dad is so opposed to his son being involved in sports in any capacity is where I draw the line, because it's a level of control. It's like you're trying to exert your control over your children, and not just in a like they're doing something wrong, which I think he should be exerting in the sense of like respect for your siblings, respect for your parents. I think that's something that we can talk about. We could discipline. Absolutely. That needs to stop. But it's that reality of you are trying to force your child to be like you.
Yeah.
Which we see a lot of that dichotomy in like parents who try and get their kids into sports, but it's interesting to see this on the flip side.
Yes. What I want to talk about is also that dichotomy of parents trying to get their kids into sports, which in the documentary High School Musical.
Could you imagine if that was like an actual documentary? I can't even.
The High School Musical documentary. It's not a documentary. I'm joking.
That is basically what High School
movie.
the Musical, the series, is almost. They do it like a mockumentary.
Yeah, a mockuseries. It's in that movie. I think it's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you should go check it out. High School Musical. It's great.
It's enjoyable. Baby Zac Efron.
Zac Efron, Troy Bolton is going over, and his father wants him to continue on in sports, but he wants to do music. And so it's a kind of funny swap where the dad is like, no, I want you to go into music and do things that aren't sports because I can see how toxic it's making you. And so I just think it's funny that we have a story of a dad who's like, no, I'd rather you play video games and, do more artsy stuff with it. That said, regardless of what you're trying to force your kids to do, you should not force them to follow the way that you want their lives to be, especially if they're making those choices. Yep. Like you said, I feel like it's respectable if you came at it from a point where let's talk through what you want to do, let's talk through how you want to do it, and if it's safe and things like that. I still feel, with my parents before, I played baseball for a little bit, but I stopped because it can be quite dangerous. A lot of sports, regardless of what you're going into, can be dangerous.
Absolutely.
But if you're doing it properly, if you're following the correct procedures there, and you're being safe, you should be able to play those sports.
Unless you're playing football. Football is dangerous.
Football can be dangerous, but Taekwondo can be dangerous too.
That is very true. There are a lot of safety parameters and a lot of paperwork that you have to sign before you start.
So I feel that if this son wants to continue playing sports, there should be an avenue for them to continue playing.
Absolutely.
Now, don't let them disrespect you.
No.
Of course, find a way to curb that, find a way to figure out that. But also, I think, again, dad is kind of picklefoot because it seems like he hasn't found a way to connect with this younger son.
Yeah.
But you got comments for me?
I do, absolutely. Yes. So first comment. You are the picklefoot for punishing your son for being different from you. You obviously have some sort of complex around sports and jocks, but you're punishing your son for having interests that you don't value is the same picklefoot behavior you complain about experiencing. Obviously, if he is participating in bullying behavior, that's a problem that you need to address. But given how you describe each of your sons, I have to wonder if you are projecting your own attitude towards jocks onto George's behavior. I can very well imagine that George is lashing out because he resents Daniel, whom he rightly perceives is your favorite, who you respect and treat like a person because he is like you. He even mentioned that he looks like you. While you treat and think of George as a lesser. It could even be that George is lashing out at his brother as a proxy for you because he can't lash out at you, since you are clearly perceive that you treat your older son as an extension of yourself. If you act like playing sports and not being interested in nerdy things is symptomatic of being a bully, and you've treated your son like he's guilty of that all of his life, can you really be surprised if he has behavioral issues to live up to the assumptions you've made about him? I just thought that kind of encompasses it. Another comment that I saw, and I don't think I made that, the reality that the mom made the decision without the dad that the son was going to go to the school. It is very Jacob and Esau, actually, because Jacob was loved by his mother, not his father, and Esau was loved by his father, not his mother, though hilariously they are switched in terms of like the muscular versus the more brainy. And it is very problematic that one parent is going and making decisions without the other parent's knowledge. I do not love that the dad made the comment of, like, I told my wife she was undermining my parenting instincts.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, hold on, because you're now fighting against each other instead of dealing with the common problem, which is figuring out what needs to be done for your son's school and what he's doing. And so it makes me wonder how much the father has been neglecting this younger son, and the mother sees it and is trying to be his ally and trying to be his advocate and working for him.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say kind of possibly a hot take. It shouldn't be a hot take here.
Yeah.
while I know some family situations like to say that one family member, especially of the two parents, if you have a two-parent household, is going to be the, we'll say, person who makes the decisions if it has to come down to it. Mm-hmm. That said, that person should still be listening to the other person.
Absolutely.
There are two of you for a reason.
This is not the 1920s. Men don't get the unilateral say in the house, and women just have to suck it up and take it.
Exactly.
Like, you need to be having a conversation with your partner regarding these things, regardless of if you subscribe to a more like traditional household of like the husband being the head of the house and the wife being subservient in that mentality or being the supporter. Yeah. Even at that, you should not be making unilateral decisions independent of each other, especially over big things like where your son is going to school.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a choice that you should be making by yourself.
No. So I'd say in total, father needs to really look into the past that he's experienced and kind of work through some of those feelings that he's probably still experiencing now. Yeah. And possibly taking out on his younger son, which you should not do.
You should definitely not be doing.
Yeah. So like possibly therapy's great.
Yes.
I think everyone should go to therapy.
Team therapy.
Yeah. It's great. But then beyond that, really slow down and start talking to your younger son about it after you've really worked through your own feelings with this, because it seems like those are peeping into this situation. Talk to him and be like, why do you like sports? What do you want to do? And what are you willing to do to continue playing sports? Are you willing to start behaving better? Are you willing to do better on your grades? Like, I don't want to stop you from enjoying the thing that you are really passionate about. That said, there are things that need to be resolved before you continue.
And that's one of those things that's really interesting to me, because it's like, he says you're going to focus on your education. He never made any comment about his son not doing well in school.
That's true.
And a lot of schools, to my knowledge, I might be wrong, but a lot of schools, to my knowledge, do not let you actively participate in sports if you're failing classes. So it just seems like this is a lot of projection.
Yep.
And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, if this is your son, you have to be willing to talk to them and learn about their passions and interests. Yeah. Because if you can only relate to the child that shares your passions, shares your interests, and you refuse to try and relate or understand or learn who the other one is, that's kind of emotionally immature on your side.
That's true.
But I do think therapy is the answer for this one, because I think he's got a lot of deep-seated stuff. I think the son has, honestly, family therapy could probably be really helpful for this whole situation. Yeah. Because it definitely seems like there's kind of like a two sides butting heads situation that needs to get resolved. Yeah. But anyways, I think, is that all the time that we have for today?
That's it. I mean, we talked through a lot. There's a lot of things that are going on here. I say let Troy play basketball.
No, let Troy be in the musical.
Let Troy do what he wants to do. It's his choice.
As long
it's his
as
life.
It's not bad.
Yes, exactly. There's a lot of different ways to experience sports. Yeah. Whether you're watching it, you're in a sport, or you're trying to stop someone else from playing a sport. I think being open-minded and also willing to understand other people's opinions is super important, especially when it comes to these kinds of things, because people play sports for different reasons. Some people use it as an outlet, some people use it to better themselves, and other people use it as like a thing to call themselves or a description for themselves. Like, I'm a football player, I'm a basketball player. So regardless of what your relationship to these sports are, I think everyone should have at least a little bit of respect to other people's decisions on those, as long as you're being positive and not toxic with it. Yeah. And, be respected enough to be able to continue on in their sports.
Absolutely. Well, that ends our episode on sports themes, but we would love to hear from you. So last episode, Philip kind of did a call out, and then I'm going to do it this week. Okay. So I'm sure that any of our listeners, you have a story about something sport related, or maybe you're like me and not able to really relate to kids and doing active sport other than maybe martial arts or some other things, and you want to share your story with us, feel free to send us a listener write-in at sheltersages@gmail.com. You can also reach out to us at any of our socials. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that little subscribe button, leave us a comment and a like, and push that little bell. If you are listening on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or anywhere else that you might podcast, you can also leave us a follow, a rating, and comment there as well. We're very, very happy to have you. And if any of my black belt students are listening to this, you guys are going to do amazing. I'm super proud of you all. And, don't forget to properly bow before you enter the floor.
Absolutely.
They will be watching.
Thank you for listening. We will see you next time.
Bye.